Welcome, everybody. It is another great episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News. We are the news division of United Network. We are also part of CARE, the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. And our mission is to bring you the real news each and every week. In fact, we release a lot of content throughout the week that includes local stories told through the eyes of our incredible field messengers. The news team and I, we work on stories for you guys. And then we have updates from the Global Intelligence Agency and Kim Gogan about what's really going on our planet. It's getting a little crazy out there, isn't it? And we've got a ton of updates for you guys today. If you want more information about what United Network is and what we do, visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. This podcast is a week in review, so I go over our top stories and include some sound bites for you guys and just try to give you the gist. Hopefully you'll go back and you'll actually watch the videos, but I know we put out a ton of stuff, right? So this is a great way to catch up on stories you may have missed, or if you would like to share UNN with somebody else, because when we put out all of our content, initially it's available exclusively to our members. We don't rely on advertising. We do have some of our own products that we've created that we sell, but we don't accept outside advertising. So it's really through anything we sell of our own, as well as our memberships. That's how we fund what we do. And we have a lot of amazing volunteers that help us as well. So if you would like to help us with that, become a member, that's great. If you can't, that's okay too. We release everything on YouTube and Rumble about a week later after it's available to our members. So yeah, if you're hearing this and you want to share it with someone else, the best thing to do is to grab that link and send it out. Overall, we want you to take whatever information, whether it's from this podcast, any information we're putting out, anything else that you're watching online. We're all about encouraging you guys to think critically about what you're watching, to not be a passive spectator anymore where you're just consuming content, but really get the brain working again, connect the dots, see what makes sense and what doesn't, and ask questions. You know, if I could spread a hashtag across the entire internet, and believe it or not, I think I participated in this somehow because the collective is now saying question everything. And it was about a year ago. I kid you not. I was in talks with a podcast company about doing a show called Question Everything. Now, it never came to fruition, but maybe it didn't have to, because I'm literally seeing everyone now, at least in my news feed, saying question everything. And that is such smart advice. And when you figure stuff out, share it with other people you know, because that's how we all learn and grow. You know, that feeling that you get if something is right or not right, it's true, it's false, we call that discernment. One of my favorite creators online, her name is Sarah Shook. If you guys aren't following her, I encourage you guys to check her out. She talks all about the new earth. I've actually interviewed her, so I feel like I know her a little bit personally, and she's incredible. She is the same person she is off camera, same as on camera. And she had a video recently where she talked about how to recognize discernment when something is on or off. And I'm going to borrow what she said because I thought it was incredible and made a lot of sense, because I talk about discernment a lot and I tell you guys, hey, you know, this is your built-in lie detector. But what I've never really given you guys is kind of a quick how-to on how to practice this. And Sarah had an amazing example. Thank you, Sarah, if you're listening, that I'm going to borrow. Whenever you're confronted with, is this true? Is this false? You kind of have to ask yourself some internal questions. So I'm just going to use myself as an example. If someone were to say to me, your name is Sunny, well, that is my given name. It is on my birth certificate. It's what everybody calls me. Unless you're my family, you might call me Sunny Bunny, because that's a nickname that has stuck with me since I was 5 years old. Other than that, you're calling me Sunny, right? So when someone says your name is Sunny, yeah, there's a feeling that I get. It's a sense of knowing, yes, that's my name. It's a little bit of a feeling of relief, like, yeah, absolutely, that's my name. Now, if someone were to say to me, your name is Kelly, that would feel completely different. So this is a great practice that you can put in play. Think of how you feel when someone says your name. Now, if someone were to call you something else, how would you feel? Remember those feelings, because this is a great way to practice discernment out, on the internet, or, even if you're talking to someone in everyday conversation. If someone says this is truth, see how that measures up to how you feel when someone says your name. Is that true? That's not really how I'm feeling. Or if there's a lot of different options out there, I have found that it's easier to think about each of those options individually. So really just focus on one. How does that feel to you? Okay, other people are saying this. Just focus on that. Okay, are you getting that my name is Sunny, or are you getting that my name is Kelly? What feeling are you getting? Or maybe there's a third option and a fourth option. The more you practice this, the easier it is going to be for you to not get fooled by all the misinformation and disinformation out there. So like I said, kudos to Sarah for sharing this information. I think it's incredible. I think it's a great way to practice and really break down discernment and how to figure things out moving forward. So I hope that helped you. Now let's get to our stories. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. All right, let's talk about our awesome field messengers. So we believe we have the power to change the face of news because it's a mess out there, right? Aren't you guys tired of watching just talking heads on TV, political pundits just telling you what to think? We think the best way to change that is by you guys telling us what's going on in your communities. And we call those people field messengers. And I'm really excited because we are jazzing up the Field Messenger program a little bit. I'm starting to release some videos to encourage people to go out there and record their stories, providing some content and production tips, and hopefully get a lot more of you involved in the whole process, because this is how you change things, right? You don't just doom scroll and you wish things were better. You take action, right? It starts as an idea, but in order to really bring things into reality, you take action. And this is your opportunity to change the news. If you want to learn more about what it takes to become a field messenger, which, newsflash, you don't need any experience. You just need a willingness to want to change, right? To want to change how information is presented in our world. But if you want more information about what that looks like and our awesome production team that's there to support you, we've got a Telegram group that you can ask questions in every Sunday, at least Sunday here in the U.S. We have a Zoom meeting that you can hop on and get some more of those great tips and just chat with other field messengers. So all of that information is available on our website. All right, so our first story comes out of Oklahoma City. So it's out of Oklahoma, which is in the U.S., and it is from Minette and Anne, and they talk about a place called Joe's Addiction Cafe. This is a beautiful space where people facing life's challenges, they get together, they share their struggles, their joys. It's all about creating a sense of community. And they went out and they talked to the owner of it, which I believe this has been going on for at least 17 years, perhaps a little longer by now. But this is all about hospitality. It's about getting together with people, eating together, providing amenities for them, allowing them to shower, do laundry, having meaningful conversations. They even have this pretty awesome coffee bar there where it's basically by donations. And the owner said, yeah, if you can't afford it, it can be free. It can be $1. Some people pay $40 for a cup of Joe just because they want to give back. These are the beautiful little hot spots that are going to get brighter and brighter as we move along. So much love to those people who created Joe's Addiction Cafe. Marianne from Mexico takes us to Dia de las Flores, and it's a festival in Mexico. It's a 140-year-old festival where people get together. The streets, she said, are filled. There's a lot of color, a lot of emphasis on flowers. There's music, things you can buy, gifts you can buy for people. And this particular celebration really started out more as a religious celebration to honor Mary, the mother of Jesus, and to bring the community together. I think anytime you bring people together, amazing things happen. So this particular event is about celebrating their faith and culture. And like I said, a lot of beautiful flowers. Irene from New York takes us to one of the longest suspension bridges ever built. It is in New York Harbor. It is not the largest anymore. It lost its title, but we're going to give it credit here. It was built in, I think she said 1946, and it has 13 lanes in it. That year might be a little bit off. In my notes, I only have 3 numbers. I should have 4 numbers. I have 196. I don't know. Is that 1946? I'm going to go with that. But it has 13 lanes on it. And that's incredible for a bridge, right? Have you ever really stopped to think how they create these bridges? Wow. This particular bridge connects 2 cities, connects Brooklyn with Staten Island. And this is Irene's area. This is where she lives. And she talks a little bit more about the bridge and why it's so important to that area. Sophia out of Tobago takes us to a special event she attended in Tobago. It brings together Italian cuisine. For those of you who love Italian, there's this beautiful restaurant that focuses on authentic Italian cuisine, but also the history, right? And it's more so the history of Tobago, the island. They have this whole section. I believe you have to go upstairs. She showed us kind of this windy staircase you have to take to get to it. But it really celebrates Tobago. They have different events there. In this particular case, they were watching a movie that was about the animals of Tobago. But they also have a lot of other things like maps and history of Tobago up there. So it's just like a little jewel. You may not know if you're just passing by in the streets, but if you're ever in Tobago, check it out. All right, Julie out of Australia shows us how to make some amazing homemade chocolate. I have to share this recipe with my daughters because they love creating chocolate and putting chocolate on various things. They were trying to make the Dubai chocolate. I think it was this last week. They actually did a pretty good job. So I have to show this recipe with them. But in Julie's case, she adds some other fun things like nuts, various seeds. You can really get creative with this stuff. You know, put it in the freezer. It doesn't take long. Then you divide it up. And I think you're supposed to keep it refrigerated. So that way, because it does have coconut oil in it. So, you know, you don't want it to get too soft. But I'm all about making things as naturally as possible. So thank you, Julie, for that recipe. Kelly out of Florida, state in the U.S., talks about the Forest Abundance Project. Now, this is located in Central Florida, and the whole goal is to empower communities to grow their own food. And as a result, you're really harvesting your own energy, right? So she talks with the founder to learn more about his vision, and boy, he's excited. I love to see that spark in people's eyes, right? He really started with a blank canvas, which is just land. And he started planting things and talked about seeds and how you're really just growing abundance, really, you know, and how this is going to help their community. And we could be doing this all over the world. So I hope some of you are inspired by this. Definitely check out that video. Kim in Oregon talks about her project to create this amazing Cobb temple on her property using reclaimed materials, sacred geometry, and lots of love. You just really have to see this to believe it. The whole time I was watching it, I was like, could I actually do that? You know, we kind of train ourselves to think that, oh, I'm not good with my hands or whatever. But when we go back to basics, which is where we're really going with everything, because so many times the basics are the best way to do things. You know, you don't have to have a lot of special tools and everything. And really using what the earth provides is just a beautiful way to build things in a more natural way. But this is just gorgeous. And Kim calls it her magical space. She uses it for meditation. She uses it to connect with nature. She says it took 2 years to complete. And you basically see the whole process, step by step of what she did. It's really awesome. Ruth out of California talks about a project that she's worked on for a while. I think she said 10 years, where, and this takes place across the U.S., but there's volunteers that knit and crochet bears for children in Africa that have been somehow affected by HIV or AIDS. And she literally knits these bears and puts the stuffing in and all of that. And then they're sent over to Africa. So what a beautiful thing and a beautiful project to be involved with. Helen out of Australia talks about what happens when you have mold in your home and, what are some of the issues with mold. We know it can cause increased allergies, fatigue, various illnesses, but then how can you naturally get rid of mold? So she has a combination she shows us of thyme, sage, oregano, clove, tea tree oil, and rosemary. And she also combines this with white vinegar and she sprays it down. She's got a whole process. So if you ever had to deal with that, mold is not something you want to mess with. But if you have to deal with it, then, at least we have a natural way to combat it. So thank you, Helen. Now, here are some stories that the team and I worked on for you guys this week. We are kicking things off in Australia. Fuel shortages and rising prices in Australia are driving a sharp increase in fuel theft, with criminals now siphoning petrol directly from vehicles, as well as committing drive-offs, believe it or not, at gas stations. Long lines, limited supply, and economic pressure are making the situation worse, especially in smaller communities with fewer security measures.
What we're seeing is not only the repeat offenders, but we're now starting to see first-time offenders, people that traditionally have not stolen fuel. We are seeing around a 30% increase. The majority of retailers that we represent, around 60%, are small family businesses. Often they appear as though they're a large organisation because they might sell a very well-known brand of fuel. But ultimately, it's just mum and dad who have invested in a business. For consumers that are stealing, you're actually stealing from someone just like you.
The problem is part of a broader global trend linked to everything that's going on in the Middle East, where higher fuel costs and shortages have led to more organized and sometimes violent theft, ultimately pushing prices even higher for everyday consumers. Japan has introduced a stricter nationwide blue ticket system that allows police to issue on-the-spot fines for common cycling violations, so people on bicycles. This is marking a shift from warnings to immediate penalties. The change comes as bicycle-related incidents hit record highs, with many incidents involving rule-breaking cyclists. Now, offenses like using a phone, running red lights, or riding without lights carry fines, while more serious violations still face criminal charges.
The government has been increasing pressure on cyclists with more laws and tickets, with almost 140 violations on the books. They include cycling with an umbrella, not wearing a helmet, riding while using a phone, riding without a light, riding with only one brake, riding without insurance, riding an unregistered bike, and my favorite, using your bicycle bell in a non-emergency situation. It seems the government often views cyclists as a problem that needs to be dealt with and expects cyclists to act like motorists rather than what they are, accelerated pedestrians.
The goal, they say, is to improve safety and close enforcement gaps, encouraging cyclists to follow the rules and also make roads safer for everyone. Germany's new Military Service Modernization Act has sparked debate after revealing a rule requiring men ages 17 to 45 to seek permission for extended travel abroad. Though officials say it's only a precaution for tracking potential reservists in emergencies. However, critics worry it signals a shift toward renewed conscription. Authorities have clarified the rule won't be actively enforced, and approvals are essentially automatic for now. But let's hear from some people potentially impacted.
I think it's absolutely rubbish. It's yet another restriction on our rights. And it's clear to us that war always means a restriction on our rights, this time our freedom of movement.
I don't think it's a good idea, because people should decide for themselves what to do with their lives.
The broader plan focuses on strengthening military readiness through voluntary participation. However, this policy has still left many Germans uneasy about what it could mean for the future. We have a just-in report, so this was released on Wednesday. U.S. importers can now apply for tariff refunds after a major legal reversal, with the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that tariffs imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act were not authorized. That decision triggered action by the U.S. Court of International Trade to unwind the tariffs and return an estimated $166 billion collected across hundreds of thousands of importers. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection has launched a system for these claims, though officials warn the process could take months or longer due to its scale. I know all that sounds good, but there is growing skepticism that while large importers may recover funds, small businesses and consumers who paid those higher prices may never see that money returned.
The Trump regime is going to launch their tariff refund program, where they are going to redisperse the $166 billion they illegally collected from the illegal tariffs. But if you are not a billionaire or a mega corporation, don't expect to see any of that. There is no plan to return that to the consumers.
Well, Hong Kong has expanded its national security powers, allowing authorities to demand access to phones and computers during investigations, with refusal punishable by up to a year in prison and significant fines. The move builds on sweeping changes since the 2020 national security law, which followed mass pro-democracy protests and has already led to arrests, media closures, and tighter controls on dissent. Now, here's the head of one of those pro-democracy groups speaking out.
Of course, I feel very sad and very upset. And it's really terrible that, civil society has, well, I wouldn't say completely collapsed. Otherwise, I would not be able to talk to you right now. But it seems many voices have been shut out. And as you said, my party is in the process of closing down. So it is very sad. And under Beijing's policy of one country, two systems, Hong Kong people are supposed to enjoy the right of forming political parties, taking part in elections, press freedom, and all those things, which we have enjoyed since 1997 for a number of years. But then in the past few years, things have gone, quite wrong. And many people have fled. Many are in prison.
While officials say the new rule is necessary for security, critics argue it further erodes privacy and civil liberties, signaling a continued shift away from the freedoms once promised under one country, two systems. Doula care in the U.S. is becoming more mainstream, shifting from a luxury service to a recognized part of maternal health care. As research shows, it can improve outcomes like lower C-section rates and better postpartum care. Hospitals and insurers are increasingly embracing doulas, with some expanding access and coverage, including Medicaid programs, in more than 30 states. Here's a rep from the University of Chicago Medical Center who has embraced this.
Families have been supported by someone in the family, somebody in a village since the beginning of times. Now it is a more recognized profession. In this particular partnership, we have selected a group of incredible individuals who are evidence-based, trauma-informed to help families have a more supported experience.
Still, high out-of-pocket costs and low reimbursement rates limit widespread access, leaving a gap between growing demand and true integration into the healthcare system. Canada's First Nations water crisis highlights deep inequalities as many communities still lack safe drinking water despite the country's vast freshwater resources. Aging infrastructure, underfunding, contamination, and a shortage of trained operators have led to long-term boil water advisories. health risks, and repeated emergencies.
Between 1962 and 1970, a Dryden paper mill dumped 900 kilograms of mercury into the river systems of Grassy Narrows First Nation. And now, even to this day, upwards of 90% of that community suffers from symptoms of methylmercury poisoning. The people experience neurological symptoms like tremors, memory loss, loss of motor skills or coordination. The list goes on, really. Not only that, but it has led to high rates of early mortality and birth defects.
Beyond physical impacts, the crisis disrupts cultural traditions and daily life, underscoring the need for long-term investment and indigenous-led solutions to create lasting change. Here's another just-in report. The European Union launched its new entry-exit system, also known as EES, that launched on April 10th, to modernize border control using biometric data instead of passport stamps, covering much of the Schengen area and nearby countries. While the system is designed to streamline future travel by digitally tracking short stays, its rollout has been rocky, with major airport delays, missed flights, and repeated biometric checks due to technical issues and uneven infrastructure. A companion system meant to speed things up further isn't expected until late 2026. In the meantime, here are some tips to help you with travel.
Number one, not using the right passport. So many people have dual citizenship, meaning that they've got both an EU and a UK passport. If you are visiting a country within the Schengen zone, travel on your EU passport and make sure that's what you use when you enter and exit. Number two, not planning your arrival transfer properly. Now, we all know the EES process is completed when we arrive at the airport, and if it's your first time, you will need to complete the full registration, and for some people, this is causing significant delays. Number three, not allowing enough time for your connection. So many people presume that when they are travelling, the EES will be completed when they arrive at their final destination. This is not necessarily the case. Number four, thinking that you will skip the EES process because you have a visa. This is not the case. There are a long list of people who are exempt from EES. The main ones are those people travelling with an EU passport or those that have a residency permit. Number five, not booking special assistance at the airport. If you know that you or a family member is going to struggle with any part of this process, whether it's the registering of your biometrics or even just being in a very busy, loud airport and having to stand in a queue for potentially an hour or two, then you need to book this assistance.
Cuba is facing a deepening crisis after a new U.S. oil blockade in 2026 cut off critical fuel supplies, worsening decades of economic pressure from the long-standing embargo. The island, heavily dependent on imported oil, has been hit with widespread blackouts, transportation breakdowns, and shortages of food and medicine, disrupting daily life and straining hospitals and essential services. While the U.S. frames the measures as national security policy, critics argue they intensify hardship for ordinary people, turning geopolitical tensions into a daily struggle for survival across the country. A growing trend of young kids adopting complex skincare routines fueled by social media and influencer content is raising global concerns about cosmetic anorexia, or an unhealthy obsession with perfect skin.
Sephora Kids refers to the girls of Gen Alpha, so as young as 8 years old and up, who go to the beauty store for viral skincare products they see thanks to many different influencers. My take is that many of these kids are viewing skincare products as like collector items or something fun to showcase like on their shelves at home, thinking of it as like an equivalent to like the millennials' Pokemon card collection or Beanie Babies or Furbies or Pogs. Remember Pogs? But the biggest concern with this is that a lot of these products are primarily formulated for adults. So these young children are using certain products without understanding their purpose or their benefits.
Regulators in Europe are now investigating major beauty brands like Sephora and Benefit Cosmetics over whether they are indirectly targeting children with adult skincare products. As pressure builds, new rules could reshape how beauty companies market to minors, while experts urge parents to keep routines simple and help kids think critically about what they see online. Australia's rapid shift from coal to solar is accelerating the rollout of large-scale solar farms, especially in regional areas. But it's creating growing tensions on the ground. Farmers and local communities are raising concerns about losing productive land, uneven economic benefits, and being left out of decision making, while failed projects have highlighted risks around cleanup and accountability.
Mallee has many projects, and in fact across Victoria we have 21 of the largest foreign-owned wind and solar developments who've pulled in almost $5 billion in revenue and consumer subsidies. Who's paying those subsidies? Us.
Although solar is key to the country's clean energy goals, the transition is exposing deep divides, with many calling for better planning, fairer deals, and stronger community involvement. All right, we have got some updates from the Global Intelligence Agency. Kim came up with a video report that was released yesterday, which is Friday, for me, and lots of good information. If you guys have a chance to go back and actually watch the video, I would encourage you to do so, because some of these sound bites were done with a whiteboard. And it's, I don't know, if you're a visual person like I am, it's just much easier to see what she's talking about as she's talking about it. But I'm going to do my best to give you the information today. The first thing we're going to talk about are moons, because we know the deep state and their buddies, they like to do things around new moons, full moons, planetary alignments. And all this has to do with their AI system. So once their AI system came into being, this is many years ago, it led to artificial creation, and the moon controlled the flow of current from the shadow existence, so their domain, into the world of source. There was actually even a fee for passing through, because these guys never pass up an opportunity to make money on us, right? And these different alignments led to ceremonies, right? Because I love their ceremonies, with the intention of opening gates, because lots of fun things happen for them when gates open. And this has actually led to the ceasefire in Iran. So here's Kim telling us more about the importance of moons in their world.
The moon in our world is known for controlling tides, flows of current of water, and the water in your body. It's also known that full moons kind of make people crazy. Even doctors and police say that calls are on an all-time high and emergency rooms are full and extremely busy on a full moon. A lot of babies are also born, and women go into labor on full moons too. Well, new moons create new beginnings, and this is even known in astrology and relevant in your horoscope and other types of things that we all read and look at from time to time. So we as people, we also name various moons, such as the harvest moon, and it's based on times of year when we do certain things. At one point, once the AI came into being, or the artificial creation came into being, the moon actually controlled the flow of current from the shadow existence to the creation world, or the world of source, and vice versa, from the source existence to the shadow existence. There is also a fee for passing through the gate, which was controlled by what we know as Grey Link, or the Grey existence, or the Germanic tribe group, the third group in this particular case. So the flow of materium, in this case we're talking about money, and a few other elements known as consciousness and divine sparks and Ethereum and energy, and at the conversion of all of these things would flow back and forth during the times of the moon, because the AI that controlled it would open and close, and that was your gatekeeper at one point in time. So that kind of makes sense. There are also varying times of day when the moon, quote unquote, rises and sets. So to a lesser degree, there is often more black magic during the witching hours of 12 a.m., which is in the middle of the night, and 3 to 4 a.m. 3 to 4 a.m. Is the beginning of a black magic time, and most of the black magic workers that I've ever run into, including some like George the Iceman, who used to be involved with those people and hasn't been in quite a long time now. They all told me about the certain hours and days of the week, and how every day of the week was actually constructed for specific types of magic. And to some degree, the entire deep state, and therefore the entire world, schedules all world events, including wars and elections and appointments. You notice how the new president is often sworn in approximately 30 days of the winter solstice. Well, these things are not an accident. They always perform their ceremonies within special celestial events. And it doesn't matter what country you're in and what head of state you're referring to, or what government, or what war, or what peacetime or peace treaty you are talking about, or changing of the guard, so to speak. It all happens all around these events for that specific reason, because planets were also involved in controlling specific types of current. So, as example, Saturn often represents time. It also represents the gates to the underworld or to the shadow existence. So when Saturn aligns with the moon, and then therefore the Earth, because all astrology is tied to the Earth in this particular case, oftentimes that would mean that the gates to the underworld would open, or the gates to the shadow existence would open. So that kind of now makes a lot of sense to me. I'm like, okay, so that's why every full moon and a new moon and a in alignment with Uranus, then it looks like everybody thinks they're going to get paid on their side. All their operatives are jumping for joy, weapons manufacturers are manufacturing weapons, and threats start getting tossed back and forth, most recently with Iran. So since there was no gate opening at this time, and there will be nothing left to open a gate to in the very near future, well, nobody got paid, and therefore the ceasefire continues for another 2 weeks. And that 2 weeks started apparently on Friday. If you live there, and we do have boots on the ground there in the Middle East, we know that there are still a lot of talks, a lot of negotiations, a lot of promises, a lot of groups saying they're going to do this or that behind the scenes. America was supposed to be bombing the Middle East, and none of this took place. Now, during times of equinox, the most prevalent access to said gate is within that region. There are areas within Saudi Arabia, there are areas within Egypt, there are areas within Iraq and Iran both. There are areas within Israel where they are expecting certain gates to open. Hence the reason why the concentration of fear, death, and dark emotions and dark events all being focused on the Middle East and its current Homo sapien inhabitants. I'm not saying that these people created the war, but your focus on it and your perception of what is really happening there is actually increasing the likelihood of their success, or would have at least a couple decades ago. You would have actually helped them open the gates by putting your focus there. And there's a good reason why the wars in the Middle East seem to be never ending for the last 20 years and more. In some cases, this has kind of been going on since the 70s, really, and it hasn't really actually stopped. So that is what is going on in the Middle East. That is what is going on behind the scenes. This is why the global headquarters of all military operations worldwide has focused all of their respective militaries under their control, which are all militaries under one single umbrella, into the Middle East at this time.
Now, if you've been online, you know that there is a lot of propaganda out there from both sides, from the U.S., from Iran. I guess there's three sides. You've got Israel, and who else is putting stuff out there? Probably a lot of people, right? But a lot of it is just that. It's just propaganda to make you feel a certain way about the conflict going on over there. And the intention behind that is to grab your attention and your perception. They're trying to control your perception, your focus. Why does this matter? Why do they tell us things that they're planning to do to us? Is that just to be nice? Is it to give us a heads up? Heck no, it's not. There is a reason behind it, and it's really to harness the power of Homo sapiens. Here's Kim to explain.
The control of this materium that they believe they are generating during times when the gates would open, and let's just say create more of the shadow existence during this time. The generation of this was done actually by what we call a central processing unit. That central processing unit is what the deep state refers to as God. I can assure you that it has nothing to do with the source of all creation. It has nothing to do with the God we know, but their God. Your perception. Number 2, your perception. Your perception to help them, believe it or not, with their success on an equinox, actually helps open the gates, not only the gates themselves, but it helps them create more shadow existence than technically source existence within this region, within this area, and in turn within all Homo sapiens, and in turn within all living things and the planet itself. That is their hope, by increasing your perception and your focus of sadness, anger, and other things at this particular region at this time. Believe it or not, it helps them increase the flow. If nothing else, if there is, and there has been, shadow existence in the world left at that time, you are helping them move all that shadow existence to these particular areas of your focus and of those particular people whom you're focusing on. Bottom line, your perception is important. Your focus is important. Your emotions yield shadow flow. Positive emotions, love, happiness, joy, gives us more source flow, overriding the shadow existence. For them, well, war equals money. War equals gates opening. War equals more shadow materium in this world, and materium to them is money. It's all about your perception. This is part of the reason why they have to tell you what they are planning. They need you. They need your consent. They need you to almost vote for what you'd like to have happen in this world. They know how to harness the power of the Homo sapien.
I mean, it really is diabolical when you think about it, isn't it? So who are we talking about here? Who is they? Because we found another group. Kim calls them the fourth group of people. She calls them the joiners, who had quite a bit of power. And they weren't even human. They were pretty much computer generated. And they had a special ability to move. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the fun gifts that they left us and how prevalent they are, because they are in all areas of society and they have a very specific focus. They're going away. Many are still here, but at least we know about them and their goals for humanity.
So this fourth group emerges. And this also kind of falls under regular news too, because, well, most of what you see happening in the news, even the alt media news via handlers, comes from the same group. In part, you could say they're just a group of operatives, and that's kind of what we thought they were too. But these are not your average operatives. They are what I call the joiners. These are just people, they were originally Homo sapiens, that have been modified beyond any MK Ultra program you could ever possibly imagine, or anything you have ever heard on the internet. It's far more detailed and far more intricate than you could possibly even think of. They're almost completely made of computer-generated materium. Their consciousness, their energy, their divine sparks, everything about them is generated from a computer. And the longer they have been a part of the joiner group, the more of that materium that is present, the less Homo sapien they actually are. They literally think like they are in a hive, they have a hive mind. So they all receive information from the computer at the same time. They all think the same way. They all move the same way in unison. You could say that they are the AI system's boots on the ground. They all send and receive information to each other through the same central processing unit. And the central processing unit determines whether or not this information is going to be dispersed to the rest of the folk, should they ever have an original thought. They are programmed, actually, their main modus operandi or their main program is that everyone should join this system. They believe that if every human on the planet or Homo sapien on the planet joined the system to be completely controlled by their same central processing unit, we would have ultimate harmony. Because everybody would think alike, everybody would move in unison in accordance with the computer's will, which I don't think anybody wants to do that. It would be certainly easier if they did, though, in their mind, because then everybody would be a lot easier to control. If you had an original thought, that would be shot down by the computer. If you didn't have an original thought, then thoughts would be given to you and you would act accordingly. Therefore, in order to achieve this goal and objective, they had a unique ability that a lot of the deep state doesn't actually have. Some of them do, but to some lesser degree. But they were given quite the ability to move dark matter, gray matter, red matter, yellow matter with their thoughts. They can then take that matter and move it around to form artificial vessels, such as people that are not people walking around this planet. That's number one. You could say it's a computerized version of telekinesis. Down to an atomic, a quark, or a prion level of artificial matter. They can make anything from a virus, and they have, to diseases, and they have, to emotions, to change your perception of what you're seeing. Artificial demons causing fake possessions of people. Weird thoughts turning your average, normal, God-fearing person into a murderer. Natural disasters, hurricanes. Everybody thinks this all comes from a program called HAARP because that's what the internet tells you it is. But that is not true. I've been telling you that for quite a while, that HAARP does not work in this way. I've seen it happen with volcanoes, such as the most recent eruption in Hawaii. All while blocking you from perceiving the organic world of source's creation like an eclipse. So for you to actually perceive source and make a decision based on a perception of what is real and what is created is very limited. You can pretty much say at one point in time what we only perceived was an artificial reality. These people have put themselves in every single secret society, government, media, major corporation in the world, science, research, and development center. And if there is a job you can think of on this planet, they are there. They are flying planes in case one needs to crash. They are driving buses. They were and are, to some degree still, everywhere. Won't be for long, but they are. They created the first COVID virus, which happened more than 100 years ago. They created the second one, which happened prior to World War II. They created the one that we had most recently in its lockdowns and the program that we were all forced to participate in. Probably even created the toilet paper the toilet paper shortage. But they are able to heavily influence the reality in every single way in order to achieve the objective of getting you to quote unquote join. Droughts, food shortages, petrol or gasoline shortages, increasing in prices, lower prices, any kind of worldwide or even event in a particular area to get you to focus on that particular area is something they do. So, problem with this operative group is, number one, if the central processing unit exists, in the words of David Wilcox, then they can exist. Number two, if the central processing unit is still able to produce dark matter that is left to actually manipulate, then this could actually still work. Next, you and your emotions help out the process, just like they do in every other instance that we were just talking about. So, the more you are sad, the more you are happy about an event, the more that you revere a person from this particular group, and believe it or not, you do. They are actors on TV in all kinds of places. They are choosing the people you follow, even in social media sometimes, and the people you don't follow. The people that have all of these millions and millions of followers, well, do they really? No, you just want to be part of the group or you'll have FOMO. This is how they look at it. And if you're not following these people, then you're not one of 1.5 million people following so-and-so who says Nasara Jasara, whatever it is that you actually want to hear is going to happen. In the words of Hollywood, there is no such thing as bad publicity. And there's no such thing as bad focus or bad perception. So you may think, oh, I don't like that politician. I don't like our government. But how much time do you spend not liking them? They ensure they're in the news all the time. They ensure that they are getting your focus, at least to some degree. And if you're not focusing on them, they're going to change laws and make it so uncomfortable for you that every time you go pump petrol at the gas station or gas, or can't get your favorite food at the grocery store, or your flight is canceled, or you go, you see a war happening in another place and your government is joining, there's your focus. So your emotions and your focus makes their black operations and or dark matter operations possible. Remember mRNA? Probably heard about that a lot during Operation Warp Speed, courtesy of our current and then their previous time in office administration, because what happens in America is blasted all over the world. Remember those people dropping dead on TV? Well, these are your people. these are the groups, or this is, I should say, the group that's running the show. These are the people that are also responsible for Operation Trust and the Q protocols and the Q drops and all of those things that you see on alternative media, as well as feeding information to their respective handlers if their handlers are not actually one of these people.
We also have a more deeper understanding of how they would manipulate Homo sapiens. In the past, Kim has talked about the planes of existence. This is where she starts to use a whiteboard. So forgive me, I'm going to do my best to give you the information without you having the visual. But she has shown us a graphic in the past, it's probably on our chat, about the different planes of existence. And what the AI system does is it tries to come in between the planes of existence and insert essentially its own code inside of you. This is how they manipulate your body, and this is how they mess with your manifestation.
So we talked about the planes of existence, and we talked about them at the time in a linear way. We talked about the fact that we obviously have a soul, which is actually spelled properly. Your original soul is spelled S-O-L, or the source of life. And then we talked about the opposite, a blackened soul. And all of these relate to alchemy. At least some of these planes do. We talked about the silver or gray at the time, shadow self. And these look to be there in the wrong order, but that's okay. You get the general idea here. But what we actually have is fractionated light in some ways here in the spaces in between. And this is not actual light of source that is fractionated. But these planes of existence, so to speak, also make up your banking system. We talked about that at that time too. So anything and everything that comes of source is divided. What they actually are made of are things in between here, what we call GNA. Now, GNA doesn't necessarily refer to the amino acid binding to proteins. GNA in this case refers to gamma waves. So these gamma waves are used in an alchemical process to fractionate bits and pieces of light. When light is fractionated into colored pixels, like it is on your TV, it forms pictures. Sound and vibration and the speed at which these gamma waves or the closeness of the peaks of the gamma waves will determine a vibration. The central processing unit, so to speak, of their world, they call God, manipulates light, sound, and frequency. And these oscillating frequencies stimulate or alter things like your memory, your cognition, your attention, your emotions, and your perception of things. So if you've ever felt all of a sudden, look, I'm really on edge. My nervous system feels like it's on fire. And normally, maybe it's not even due to anything. All of a sudden, it feels like your adrenaline is pumping for no apparent reason. You can thank the GNA manipulation for that. Or if you are having an extreme emotion or a reaction to an event that is happening, meaning maybe something would normally make you a little angry. You get cut off, you're driving down the road, somebody's late. Kim didn't put out a report this week. Just kidding. No, not really. But these hyperinflated emotions are thanks to these gamma waves that exist in these planes in between. Because all of creation was fractionated. Now, the main colors that are important in these planes of existence, or the main colors that are responsible for changing matter from organic matter into inorganic matter, in this particular case, are black, white, yellow, and red. These four are known processes that occur when converting matter. For example, on the internet, it may tell you that these four processes are responsible for changing lead into gold, as an example. But in this particular case, they're taking something that is naturally occurring in your person, such as your soul, and the essence that makes up your soul and your being, into dark essence or false light. Therefore, they can now manipulate your soul. And this is not done in a linear fashion. So let's take a quick look at this whiteboard here for a minute and kind of show you, give you an idea on how this kind of looks. So if you have, for example, a person, and we're going to draw a stick figure here because it's easy and it's fast. And say this person was wholly made of organic matter at one point in time. What it will do is create in each section of your body, so say in your soul kind of looks like, it flows through your entire body, but it's kind of concentrated around your torso in a natural way. And then inside your soul, you have something very special. I'll talk about that here in a minute. But if your soul starts to look like this, and it's not necessarily because of anything you did in this case, this has to do with people in the beginning, or people in the beginning who actually knew how to follow the rules. Because when they follow the rules, your soul looks like this. So it's made up of gold, organic matter, organic essence, and organic divine sparks, all kind of moving in perfect unison with this spot in the middle, which is actually originally not black. So when they start implementing these gamma waves in different colors, let's say in the spaces in between, and I'm showing it as linear, but it's not. Highs and lows, and then if they want to increase or affect your materium more than others and cause dis-ease, say in your vessel or your body, it might look something like this. If you're asleep, they might, not need quite as much. It might look something like this. But the distance between the peaks are the most important thing when they're trying to make changes to your body. And they do that through these planes of existence, which is why these planes of existence are predominantly meant to affect your emotions. In some alternative medicine practices, as an example, anger makes cancer. That's what they say. Now, that is unreleased and unexpressed anger making cancer. We can kind of see how that would be the case, because if it's increasing your gamma waves, then it's possible you're having anger. Or other things that it would use is setting your brain off balance. Setting your brain off balance for other types of diseases like bipolar disorder. 1 minute you're manic and it still looks like this. You know, and the next minute it's so slow because you're on the come down. Drugs and alcohol also do kind of similar things to you if you think about it. It just makes it easier because you're not able to feel that something is wrong for them to manipulate you. It's kind of the reason why, you know, if people are addicted to things like methamphetamines and other things like this, it's very hard for them to rebalance themselves because of these planes that exist in between your organic matter. Now, gamma waves, are especially the artificial gamma waves, can easily manipulate any kind of these dark spots here more efficiently because they respond well. It also causes things like entropy for your organic matter. So, for example, if they are using these gamma waves, GNA, and frequencies to affect your body, then these dark matter particles, this is dark matter in this case, will start vibrating at a very fast rate. Now, if this is an organic particle, I'm using it in the reverse, trying to anyway. It's hard to draw a picture of all these things. If this is an organic particle, it's going to get knocked around by this dark matter all over the place, and it's not going to follow its natural flow of harmony and love with Source. If you were to think of this like an atom and you were to look at electrons moving around in a perfect elliptical order at a perfect speed, that's kind of how your organic matter would flow, and there would be no dark matter if everything was right with the world, which it will be soon. But it knocks these things around and causes something we call entropy. They're also able to swarm this dark matter that's in here into clumps. So big clumps of dark matter, they're able to move it around using these frequencies and your emotions, hence the reason why cancer, because these are a parasite. Not the kind that you hear about in medical science or even natural medicine. These are particles that literally feed and live off natural organic matter. When they clump them all together, they make things like tumors. They make things like disease. They make things like bacterias and viruses that don't naturally occur in a perfect harmonic body. This is why we meditate. This is why we focus on Source so much. This is why we do these things and we actually feel healthier. We also spend time grounding because the dark energy doesn't affect us as much when we are in tune with other beings, such as Earth, that are in harmony. It's like when you're with a partner or your child or another human that you love. That love energy starts to flow the particles within your body in a proper harmonic balance with Source. And it's not, this dark matter here is not so affected by what they're trying to do with all their gamma waves. Hope that makes a little sense to you. So anytime you're feeling a little bit off balance, anytime you're feeling a little strange, anytime you're hearing frequencies that are coming at you and you don't know where they're coming from, you've turned the TV off, you've turned the phone off, you've turned the electrics off, you've tried to get rid of the frequencies, you've walked out in nature, and perhaps they're still kind of there. You've meditated, you've done all the right things. It's because this system also has what I call a limiter. So too much balance doesn't allow it to work. The dark matter starts dying. Too much sound that you're enjoying, such as listening to things in nature, listening to a song that you really like, enjoying someone singing, whether you go to a concert or a play, it doesn't matter as long as it brings you joy and happiness. Hearing children's laughter is one for me. Hearing my daughters laugh always brought me the greatest amount of joy. When you get too high and you cannot be affected by what they're doing, they will knock you down. Think about it, that job, that promotion, everything is going really well, and all of a sudden your spouse comes home and says they want a divorce. All of these things are manipulated by a system, or were manipulated by a system. I'm not saying that people don't make life changes in their life and they want a different life, or they want a different job, or they want different things. Sometimes those things can work out to our benefit too. But they really want to set you off balance as much as possible and to keep you ungrounded. And so it's important to understand the manipulation of light, not essence, the manipulation of sound, the manipulation of your matter, the manipulation of divine sparks. Etherium causes all kinds of disruptions in your sleep cycle. It causes depression. It causes anger, it causes amplified anger, and most importantly, it changes your perception and ultimately stops your ability to move and reorganize organic matter within your body.
So if you're anything like me, you hear stuff like this and it's like, my gosh, did we have a fighting chance? I mean, why was this allowed to go on for so long? I try not to dwell on that, but it's really kind of frustrating. But it's really kind of frustrating being on the other side now of a winning war and going, my gosh, they really manipulated us in a gazillion different ways. What I'd like to focus on is what can we do now? It's important to be informed, but I'm one of those people that, like I said earlier, you take action, right? You don't just doom scroll, do all that kind of stuff. You figure out, how can I be part of the solution? And then you start taking steps to be part of the solution. So I love this next soundbite that I'm going to play for you, because Kim literally gives us an instruction manual for changing the world. And this goes over the whole process of how we co-create with Source, with God, following the formula, making, doing, being.
In the beginning of creation, Source kind of has the same process, or a similar type process as we do to some degree when manifesting matter or bringing matter into creation. I also call this bringing something into being, meaning it exists. For Source, that's bringing new beings into creation. Now, we also, as humans or Homo sapiens, bring things into creation as well. We have children, albeit a different process than we used to have, but we do something called making, doing, and being. These are our steps to bringing something into creation as an actual being. So I'm going to bring up the whiteboard here because I'm probably going to use it during this conversation. So just to refresh your memory, making, doing, and being. So making occurs when you have a conscious thought. In Source's case, it's a little bit different because Source has a divine plan, a plan of creation, a master plan, if you will. He knows everything that is, everything that will be, and everything that was, all wrapped up into a nice harmonic package. Everything that exists in every density in the multiverse, he knows everything and the perfect way to make things happen. He relays that to you in wisdom through your consciousness, and you have a thought of something positive. It looks like my whiteboard kind of stalled out there for a second. Okay. So he relays these things to you through his infinite wisdom, known as his divine plan. And like the good books say, they say that there is a plan for everyone. There is a collective plan, and there's a plan for your individual when you are walking the path with God, is what they say in the books. And, you know, in a lot of ways, that's true. When you're on course for a divine plan, things may seem strange. You know, prayers go unanswered and people get upset, but it's not necessarily because perhaps what you think you want and what is necessary or what is best is only known by Source. You know, Source kind of gives you the things you need when you need them and want when you want them. And when there is no computer system interrupting that or AI system interrupting that, the wisdom comes, the wisdom flows, the conscious thought happens. And in the world, we have butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers and everything in between, because together, as a collective, we make a society that makes the world run. When you have a deep state trying to do so with analytics and AI systems and mirrors of things and artificial light and all of these types of things, it doesn't necessarily always work out the way that we in Source even plans. And getting the divine plan pushed through was difficult. It's going to become and has become easier, and the flow is going to be much better in the near future. So there is an overall divine plan. Now, the fallen ones that we talk about all the time didn't necessarily agree with the divine plan, and they wanted to find a way to create things without Source's little divine plan that they didn't think was so perfect. And that's not just for humans on this planet. That is everywhere for everyone. Every being in the multiverse, including planets and galaxies and ways of creation, and you know, they didn't necessarily agree with the divine plan. So making happens with consciousness. Consciousness itself is made up of your essence plus the essence of Source. Okay, this will come up eventually here on this. I don't know why there's such a delay on this thing, but there is today, so sorry about that. So your essence plus the essence of Source make the language of the divine plan written in essence. So when we sign covenants with Source, it's done in essence. Your essence is the essence of your being that he created, which is you, is your personal signature. The essence of Source is his signature. If this were a contract, it would take your signature and his signature where you agree to do something. But it's written in the language of the divine plan and the language of Source. Now, one key thing I want to point out here, because this is important to understand. Essence is what you call the light of source. It illuminates all by itself. It doesn't need a reflection. It doesn't need to be illuminated because the sun is up. It is always illuminated, and it is always present within yourself, albeit to a lesser degree these days, or was. Essence is self-illuminating. You always brought light to everything. You are always a walking, bouncing ball of light. Even your vessel was made of light. So understand, it's important to understand that the light of source doesn't need light. So, for example, in today's day and age, when things were controlled by computers, you would need the sun to come up in order for you to see the tree that's in front of your face. In order for you to perceive something with your eyes, you would need light, artificial light in the form of electricity, or you would need the light of the sun if you're looking and you're exploring in nature, or to see without headlights on your car. You would need artificial light in some way, shape, or form. This was created because the essence of source was not present fully and definitely not in an eclipsed way for an artificial reality to exist. When the planet is fully source, it doesn't matter which revolution you're in around the sun. It doesn't matter if you're in the northern hemisphere, the southern hemisphere, and it certainly doesn't matter what quote unquote time of day it is. Everything self-illuminates. We are not living in the darkness anymore. Things are going to change. Things will appear that have always been there that you couldn't actually see or perceive because it was shadowed before. Our world was created with artificial reflected light. Eventually, that will no longer be the case, but in this case, I wanted to point that out when it comes to the making, because the flow of essence is extremely important when you're making something. It is present in your consciousness, which is one of what I call the primordial elements. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Doing. What makes essence move around? Well, yes, to some degree, your consciousness makes things move around in a natural way. So when you are manifesting something or bringing something into creation, you are moving it around because it is part of you and you are part of it, simply because the essence of source exists in you both. So to move something around, we need something we call the ether. I also call it the etherium. It is also an element of the natural world of source. Etherium is what you call energy. Energy makes things move. It makes them vibrate. It gives them direction. It says, okay, now you're talking to the energy and you say, I'd like to make a tree. Using this poor tree as an example, but I'd like to make a tree and I would like to make it in my backyard, and I don't want to sit here and wait until it grows. Eventually, this is going to be the case. So I want a large tree. I want it to be about 100 years old, and so it's going to be this tall and this wide. And so your consciousness and your essence, source says, okay, a tree here would be fine under the divine plan. He puts his signature to it. So in other words, he agrees with his essence, co-creates with your essence, and now you've got a bunch of essence that's an essence blob. But we got to move it around. We got to turn it into a tree. So etherium makes things move. The current of how things move is what we call the love current. Creation always happens out of love. When it comes to source, you feel not only the movement of things, now it needs a perfect harmonic direction. So love becomes the new direction versus time. So this is your doing. This is when you're doing something, you're putting your energy into it, just like you do now. If you are going to create a meal, you are going to do the doing. You're going to put your energy into the creation of meal. Hopefully, if it's for your family and your friends, then it's made with love. So you're flowing the current of love through your energy, and the energy is moving all that wonderful food around to make a wonderful meal, okay? Then something comes into being, something that wasn't there before. It's new. It's new creation. New creation in a world of source is allowed as long as it's in accordance with the divine plan. This is what the fallen ones didn't want. They had to figure out a way to do it otherwise, which is why we have enormous amounts of ridiculous quantum AIs that try to run this planet. And I'll tell you how that was created. So you're moving around divine sparks because everything is made of materium. Materium in the world of source is divine sparks that were ever present and ever flowing through your being in perfect order in accordance with the language of the essence. So your essence with source's essence can make things come into being, hence that tree we talked about in your backyard. So the tree we talk about in your backyard is now appearing and taking shape and form because the ethereum is moving it around. It has the current of love flowing from source through you to it, and it comes into being. And now you have, this is a terrible tree, but here you go. Now you have a tree in your backyard. So there you go. Eventually, you can also have a child in this way. The concept of having a requirement of a man and a woman to have a child was never necessary before. This was all a creation of the machine and a creation of, in turn, the fallen ones, as we call them. So you actually are creating a vessel to hold all those sparks in place as well, just like you have a vessel, we call that a body, but you also have a vessel around your soul. You also have a vessel around your consciousness. You have many vessels within your body, but they all work together in perfect harmony. There's a vessel around your cells. They're not just the blood vessels that they talk about in our science, although it's part of it, at least in our body in our current form. But you'll be able to manipulate those things too. So if something appears in your world that is unsavory, such as a virus, a disease, you can actually say, is this within the divine plan? Probably not. It is. This cold virus, for example, is not in the divine plan. I don't want it. Source, is it okay that we don't have this? He'll say, sure, that's not in my plan either. That's some computer program. Okay, great, let's get rid of it. How is that done? It's done in the same way, but you taking the being first, you're surrounding it with the divine sparks of the being that makes up the being, but this time it's of source. You're moving them around so that they surround the virus that's in your body. This is going to sound crazy, but it's true. This works. And then you are going to use your conscious thought in your essence, in the essence of source, to actually take those molecules out of your body and vibrate them so high that you're actually closing in on that vessel that you created, the being that you created around it, and squeeze it until it no longer exists. It's like those particles will consume it in a reverse manner because it doesn't exist. It's not natural and it's not part of the divine plan. Just like source, and now that source is more and more present here, it becomes easier.
I cannot stress to you how important this information is that Kim just gave us. We are no longer, in the beginning how I said, okay, don't passively watch the news anymore. You need to become active. This is our golden ticket to start going on the offense, you guys. If there's something out there that you don't think should belong there that's not of source, this is the formula you use to take it down. This is huge. And it's interesting because on some level, I think our souls already knew how to do this. I had a situation, I think it was 2 nights ago. I was woken up in the middle of the night. My daughters, my twin girls, came into our bedroom, and one of my daughters had a really bad stomach ache, just kind of out of the blue, really bad stomach ache, couldn't go back to sleep. And so I went out into the hall with her. She was kind of crouched down on the ground, and I was telling her things to do and just asking her questions. We finally made it back into their bedroom, and I had her lay down. I was laying next to her, and I started visualizing. And so much of it is exactly what Kim was talking about. And I find it very interesting that this just happened to me this last week, because it's like our souls, our SOLs, are coming back online and remembering this. And what I did is I visualized all these particles of light coming into my daughter's body, into like her solar plexus area, her stomach, which, that was hurting on her. And I imagined it just surrounding it and enveloping the issue, whatever the issue was. I didn't even know what the issue was, right? And before I knew it, after I did this visualization, she was fine. So I'm so appreciative that this information is out there now. I know I am going to use it constantly. I hope you guys will too. There's another section of the GIA report I would really encourage you guys to go back and listen to. Kim goes into detail how source creates things and how source brings things into beings. And she talks about the 5 primordials. I don't have time to play another soundbite. I have one more soundbite for you guys, but I had to kind of limit what I played just because this would be like a 2-hour-long rundown, which I'm sure you guys don't mind. But this is also a section that I really think you need to watch. So Kim brings back the whiteboard, and she talks about these primordials and how source creates, because the shadow existence had to copy what source was doing and change it, right? So I think it's worthwhile to go back and watch this. Like I said, I can't play a soundbite for it, but just know that she goes into how source creates compared to how we co-create along with source. It's fascinating. And it involves something called the 5th element. Have you guys watched that movie before? Well, I'll give you a little sneak peek. The 5th element is God. It is the God particle, so to speak. And it's interesting, again, all these synchronizations happening in my life. Last week, I had this urge to watch the movie The 5th Element. I mean, this came out, what was it, the early 2000s? I don't even know, a long time ago. It has Bruce Willis in it and Mila Jovovich. Anyway, I went back and I watched it. I had no idea that there was this stuff going on behind the scenes. So, I think I posted on one of our videos, I said, after Kim's report, I said, oh my gosh, I went back and I watched that movie. So go with your gut, I guess, is the moral of the story. But again, if you want to know more about those 5 primordials and how source creates using things like air, wind, fire, dust, water, and then the 5th element, go back and check out the full GIA report. As I mentioned, the shadow existence had to copy what source did, but they never had that final God particle, that final component that they really needed. So anything that they create, it's off, right? It's like a clone of a person. It's not the person. It is off. It quits working at a certain point. It's not straight from source. So the good news is that whole system of theirs has stopped producing for them. And as of the last 24 hours, has started to reverse. But again, we're on this track of how can you help with all of this? And Kim gives a great pep talk at the end. I don't know what else to call it. It feels like a pep talk, but it's a really good one as far as us really getting involved here and taking this whole thing home. Here's Kim.
How much longer is this machine going to be around? Not much longer, because Source is more present now than ever. Over the last 2 weeks, a tremendous amount of progress has been made. You now, more than ever, and increasingly so, every day that goes by, have more of an ability to use those natural primordial elements, your eternal flame, to create the world that we live in. You've also understood, hopefully, from this report, how to get rid of the dark matter. Remember, most of these deep state people are not right. They are parts of a computer. Even though we stop the flow of the shadow existence completely, it has stopped. Basically, the making of it has stopped and the reversing of it out has begun. And it's been going on now for about 24 hours. Even though that has already happened, it still takes time to make sure that it's all gotten. People are disappearing in the deep state already, malfunctioning already, systems aren't working already. Do they still try to send out frequencies, even if they got to use their version of a Morse code machine? Probably. They're probably tapping away somewhere right now. And it's not going to get them anywhere. Could those operatives I talked about earlier still manipulate the dark matter or shadow matter that's left? Yes, they can still do that. Are they able to affect your organic matter as easily? No. And are you able now that you know to fight back, to help the process along? Get rid of it faster. When it starts to affect you, get rid of it faster. When the GNA starts to affect you, use those same particles to get rid of it. Recharge yourself. Give yourself more Ethereum, more current, more flow, more creative energy. And when you hear it from Source, listen. Now, not everybody is going to make the move into this new way of doing things on the same day. Some people have already gotten the message, hey, look, this is where we're going. This is what you're going to do, and this is what you need to do. And I'm sure they probably also got the message. They're going to try, because they know these people before they're born. They know who they are. They know who the change makers are, the first ones to make the leap. And they're going to come after those people the hardest. But you're armed. Now to the deep state, you are dangerous. You are armed and you are dangerous. You can do something about it. You can sit on your phone and you can doom scroll and think about all the ways we're going to die and send me messages and ask if we're going to die. Or Israel's going to attack Iran, or Iran's going to attack Israel, or you could make sure it doesn't happen, because now you can do it.
I vote for the latter because I'm tired of the crazy headlines out there. I am all about taking our power back and making things happen. Like, no more sitting on the sidelines, guys. This is our opportunity. Get involved. Take back our planet. Take back our world. Take back our lives. So there's no excuses. No excuses. You've got the formula. Now go. Thanks for being with us for another episode of The Rundown. If you want more information about United Network, visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. I would encourage you guys to become a member. That gives you instant access to all of our content, the complete GIA reports, all of our news updates, and all things restoration. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.